Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Glory Glory podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kel Quinn, and joining me today is Phil de Brún from BTP Media. How's it going, Phil?
Well, good mate, how are you?
Well, absolutely ecstatic after that result. The first half performance wasn't very good, but it was a huge improvement in the second half. McTominay lifted his game, as did Bruno, and of course
Mhm.
Alanga. I'm absolutely delighted with Alanga scoring tonight, and I'm pleased for the young lad. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. I think first of all, there's very little romance in football left. I think one of the few areas that is still romantic is to see a young player come through the ranks, get a chance in the first team and take it. Um, I don't think that narrative should be about criticism of Jadon Sancho. I think it really should be more about how well Anthony Alanga has done. Came in tonight, showed the attitude and the desire that United fans want to see from their players. That makes it worthy of asking them to pay in to watch it. One of the reasons why we pay in to watch sports is because we're watching individuals do something that we can't do ourselves, and we appreciate that. I think when you're not playing well as a professional, you can forgive that because it's human. But I think what is hard to forgive is when players are lacking professionalism. The very definition of a professional is to be able to perform um, in difficult circumstances, no matter what the situation. And we haven't had that. Now, I don't expect players not to be human. They're still human, no matter how much money they make, no matter what football club they play for. But I think that there's been certain things lacking inside United that are obvious. Um, and some of these things I think have nothing to do with a manager, have nothing to do with atmosphere inside a football club or tactics or anything else. These are issues that start with an individual because talent gets you to Manchester United. But what keeps you there or keeps you at a top club is what you do when you get there. And I think that a number of these players haven't deserved to wear the shirt.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've had issues with a few of the players in recent weeks and recent months. Um, Mason Greenwood being one of them. Yeah, I thought he was better tonight, but there's been games where I thought that he's not trying when United don't have the ball, and when he does have the ball, he's shooting too much. He's not looking to pick anyone out. I mean, in the previous game, all he had to do was pull the ball back to Cavani, who would have had a tap in, and he went for goal himself. But tonight seemed to be an improvement. But like we've been talking about off air, we don't trust this team yet, so we're not going to get too carried away with that result.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. We can't get too carried away with it because we've been here before and we're not sure what to expect. Here's the thing: you want to believe as a football fan that United are, that they're recovering, that this is a springboard. But we've been here before. I mean, I went through a lot of my old tweets after victories, and I was about to tweet exactly the same thing. So I think what is it? I'm trying to say that. I think for United fans, trust is built up over time with consistency, and we've looked silly in the past where we've talked about United winning games, and we've gone on social media, we've bragged about United's re-emergence, we've bragged about United um, once again being back, even as far as last season where United were sitting second, and I felt, and I think many did, that they were close. Many people were talking over the summer about being one player away from a title-winning team in a defensive midfielder, but it seems hard to believe that that's how close United were. When Mourinho says finishing second with United was his greatest ever achievement, I think most people know what he means now, and Solskjaer must also get that credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a real issues with the back four. Obviously, Varane has been very good, and De Gea obviously, but even though Wan-Bissaka, Shaw, and Maguire are not starting at the moment, still Dallo, Telles, and Lindelof don't fill me full of any confidence. What do you think?
Well, I think, again, if you go back to Mourinho's time, Mourinho, labelled Luke Shaw a problem, saying he wasn't good enough. There's no question the Luke Shaw that we saw last season was one of the best fullbacks in the league, but not this season. We talked about the importance of Alex Telles pushing Luke Shaw on and having that competition. Well, he still had that competition this year, but something went badly wrong inside that football club. I mean, if you look at United in the most charitable interpretation, you would say that they look like a team confused, that really don't know what they're supposed to be doing, don't know how to execute the game plan, are reacting to everything that happens on that field, are hoping for in a context of a fighter, I suppose, a big haymaker, that's going to win you the fight, even though you lost the boxing match on every other metric, skill, technique, footwork, everything else, but you got bailed out. And this is what United have been. So I think the contrast between the first half and second half would have filled me more with confidence if we'd have seen that in reverse, if we'd have seen the first half like that and it's not in the second half badly, simply because again we're dealing with a reactionary situation here with United reacting to the situation that they're in. They're not opposing themselves on games. Why do they need to put in a dreadful 45 minutes against Brentford when they've been dreadful prior to this against Newcastle, against Villa, and then get a reaction to the reaction? You can't keep doing that. At some point, you have to start dominating games from the off. Even Solskjaer said this. You're not going to get away with that forever. At some point, they need to start dominating games from the start, dictating games, and let teams go into games picking a game plan to contain United rather than picking a game plan to exploit United's weaknesses. And I think before we can talk about United being back or being a team that is to be taken seriously, I think we need to see routine victories. I think we need to see games where they go into games where we're pretty confident they're going to win. How many United fans, when Brentford scored, went, "Oh no"? I did. We all did, I think, which gives you an idea of how fragile our trust is in this team and probably gives you an idea of how fragile the confidence is in that team.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There hasn't been many great performances under Ralph Rangnick. I know there's been mostly wins and some draws, and I think only one defeat. But ultimately, the performances have just not been good enough. They don't fill you for any confidence. We've went away to the likes of Norwich and Newcastle, who are at the bottom of the table, and we had life and death matches with them. So it's okay. We went to Brentford, we got the result, and I'm pleased about that. But we've got a huge game at the weekend. It's a 6 pointer basically against West Ham. There's only 2 points between the sides. We're at home. We need to go and win that if we're serious about finishing fourth this season.
Well, it used to be when United would play against smaller teams would raise their game in that one game. Right? Against United was their cup final. But now the opposite's happening. Now United lower their level to the teams they're playing. And I honestly feel because prior to this game, and even in the next game, because I'm still not certain what we're seeing is something to be taken serious. What concerned me is, like I said, the reason why United were losing games was because they were lacking the bare minimum that you expect from a professional. If you go through the lower leagues in England, you will see a lot of gifted players, but they're not professional, right? They drink, they do other things, so they're not consistent. That's why they're not at the top, right? But they're very good, and on any given day they can beat you because they can show up for that day. If you remember Mourinho's comments about Pogba, when he said it's important for Pogba to be at the World Cup in an environment where he can remain focused. Ranić just talked about his focus too. If you've got something where inconsistent players have a short, small term target to remain focused, they can be consistent in that environment, but it's not long. So this is why I was concerned about United being drawn against a lower league team, because I feel that they would have more desire and intensity, just like you saw with Brentford tonight in the first half. And it could get embarrassing. So let's have it right here. That first half was a disgrace to anything being called professional. It's an embarrassment to anyone who's responsible for preparing United, giving them a game plan and tactics to go out and win a game of football because it's got their name on it. Now, I think Ranick's in a no lose situation. Perhaps the only place he can lose. The experienced managers, right, like Mourinho, for example, one of the differences between Mourinho and Solskjaer, Mourinho was planning for his next job about 6 to 7 months before he gets sacked because he knew it was coming, right? He's experienced enough to know the signs. So what you noticed was all the victories were his and all the defeats were United. Right? When they went out against Sevilla, it was the history of the football club, was everything. But Mourinho never had a problem against it, was Man United. So he was separating himself from the defeats, right? And the disaster and making sure that he spread that blame around so that the next potential employer can have enough plausible deniability to say Mourinho, it's not his fault. Now, Ranić has to be thinking about his next job, right? So he needs a good 6 months as much as Pogba needs a good 6 months. So when you look at a lot of these comments in the media, Ranić's smart enough to know I'm going to make sure I'm separated from a lot of the problems inside the football club. And they belong to someone else. I'm here to fix it. I'm not the cause of it. So if it goes wrong, he's got that plausible deniability to say, not my fault. But if it goes right, Ranić's in a wonderful situation because he could very easily land himself with this United job. Because United have a problem here. Ranić has a very specific style of play. And it takes a long time to perfect that. It makes no sense to bring him in 6 months, then kick him out 6 months later for someone with a completely different, tactical approach. So why would you want to get somebody that's like Ranić when you can have someone that is Ranić? So this to me makes no sense, and this is where I have serious question marks about why United do what they do. So, and I'm pretty sure Ranić would like to stay. But I think these next 6 months are going to be really, really interesting. Not 6 months now, it's with 4. It's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, there's a serious mentality issue within the squad, and I'm looking to blame, Ralph Ranić on the problems that's going on in the club. But as we know, the way things work in football, he'll be guilty by association, and if things don't work out between now and May, he's not going to get the job. And if the fans' favorite comes in, Eric Ten Hag or even Pochettino, no matter who it is, there's going to have to be drastic changes to this squad. Otherwise, these players will let the next guy down as well. The good thing is that there's a lot of players' contracts running down, and they can be let go. And then there's a lot of players who are not playing at all. They're not getting any minutes, and obviously they want to leave as well. So there's a chance there to clear the decks and bring in some new players. But these players not only have to have the quality to play for Man United, they need to have the right mentality, and that's where they've got it wrong so often, haven't they?
This is a bit like bringing people in and out of Wuhan at the start of January and assuming that the people are the problem. See, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what players are at United. They end up the same, right? This environment has been persistent at the football club for a long, long time, which is why I don't think it makes sense to bring players in January when you've got a toxic environment. It doesn't matter where you go. You will eventually adjust to the environment you inherit, right? Whether you're the nicest guy in the world or not, right? People, this is just the way human behavior works. They conform to the group because they don't want to stand out. They don't want to be the bad guy. They want to be liked and all that. That's just the way human behavior is. So I think with Ranić, if it goes wrong, because it's such a short-term appointment, there's enough that's happened before he got there for him to say, I tried to fix it, not my fault. It's no mark on me that I wasn't able to fix it in 6 months, right? So I think that he would be all right. I think if you look at the jobs that Ranić was getting before United, he wasn't getting top jobs anyway. So the clubs that were hiring him would still hire him, regardless of how it works out at United. So I think that something needs to be looked at with internally because when Roy Keane said these players Leopards don't change their spots. They'll throw all you on the bus. He was talking about a lot of players that aren't there anymore. But yet here we are with exactly the same situation. Players looking exactly the same as the ones who left before them. Why aren't we asking why did Alexis Sanchez want to leave after a week or a day at the football club? I know we don't like Di Maria and all these players, right? But they're not alone. Wayne Rooney wanted to leave. Lots of players at United have wanted to leave. Now, it used to be at Manchester United, no one ever wanted to leave because the only way after United was down. Now the opposite's happening. Now players want to advance their careers and leave. So what's the one thing that's been consistent since 2013? The people upstairs. At any business, the most senior employees set the environment of that business because they are the ones that incentivize employees and they're the ones that cultivate certain behaviors. They're the ones that have the ability to change it because they're the only ones that have the ability to lay down the law, right? So they're like little kids. If you see kids that have no respect, it's usually a result of bad parenting. So players will conform to the environment they find themselves in. How many times have we seen players leaving it, by the way, and then found the form that we wanted to see them with at United? There's other things involved here, of course. The systems they were bought to play. Was Jadon Sancho bought to play gegenpress? No. Nor was Rafael Varane, nor was any of those players. So now we're highlighting Jadon Sancho's weaknesses rather than his strengths. Lack of pace. Well, to be fair to Sancho, Sancho wasn't bought to play this system. And this is why, Ranić will go to 4-3-3. Because United can't play the way he's asking them to play. And this is a short-term project. If it's long-term, you stick with it. You might give Van Gaal football for a while, right? But don't tell me that Louis Van Gaal didn't know how to spot a player, didn't know a good one from a bad one. Don't tell me Jose Mourinho didn't know a good player from a bad one. But yet somehow United sign players and they rarely progress. Right? Wan-Bissaka was a better player before he came than the one he is now. So was Paul Pogba. Right? And Harry Maguire's stock was higher before he came than what he is now. Right? So I think the bigger questions have to be asked, not just about the players, because we'll find ourselves in exactly the same situation 3 years from now. And I believe this is a natural sequela to United championing the individual over everything else. United are a unique football club, not analogous to most of the rivals, because most of the rivals can't be profitable focusing on brands. They're not big enough. So in some sense, United size works against them because it's a football club that no longer values winning football games as the most important thing. That means it's a business that happens to play football. So if they can be successful at both, great. But if they can only be successful at one, they'll pick the business, right? The Glazers don't want trophies instead of dividends. Dividends are their trophies. And that is a fact, right? That's not me being cynical. That is a fact. So I think the way the football club is run, and since Ferguson left, when all that power got usurped from the manager, that really is the crux of the problem.
Yeah, here's an example of where the board have got it wrong and created a culture of player power at Manchester United. Mourinho wanted to get rid of Anthony Martial. He wasn't happy with Paul Pogba. He was putting him on the bench all the time. But the board chose the players over the manager. And that's what creates a culture of player power at United. And it leaves the manager with no power at all. And this is what we're seeing at the moment. We're still seeing that. We're seeing players who know that they're more powerful than the coach, and you create a real a rotten culture there. It's going to take a long time to sort out. Now, I know what you're going to say in response to this, but Richard Arnold, of course, has been briefing the press recently to say that he has learned from Ed Woodward's mistakes, and he's going to take a different approach, and he is going to give the football department more control. I'm sure you're thinking that it's just PR spin, and none of this is actually going to happen.
Yeah, of course they think it. Go back to the Glazer interview 16, 17 years ago. How much of that was factual? It's bullshit. Are you telling me the second most senior employee at that football club had nothing to do with the Super League? I mean, at least they were out the sword and said, hey, I'm going out because the Super League debacle, resigning in protest. Okay. I don't necessarily believe that entirely, but that's fine. So Richard Arnold wants to pretend that didn't happen, wants to pretend that he wasn't championing social media followers for new signings, wants to pretend that he's not partly responsible for the commercialism at that football club. You know, the rollout Robson and Schmeichel are not business people. They're football people. They know nothing about business. They're not there to evaluate business people. To rule them out and to get them to give endorsements to try to get the fans on side really is despicable, in my opinion. Now, with United and especially people like Richard Arnold, believe what they do, not what they say, right? So he said something like, I'm going to give more autonomy to technical director. What the hell does that mean? What do you mean autonomy? What do you mean more autonomy? Right? So yesterday, you can't sign players, you can't make any major football decisions, but today, I'm going to let you take control of 5 sides. It's a deliberately benign, vague comment. What does that even mean? If Richard Arnold wants to earn trust with United fans, he has to step outside of the Manchester United bubble of MUTV and everything else, where it's a completely controlled environment, and be willing to ask difficult, open questions that he's not prepped for on fan channels that have the experience and the knowledge to interview him properly. So I think until he does stuff like that, he doesn't deserve your trust. He hasn't earned that trust. And, you know, one thing I'll say about Ed Woodward, when Ed Woodward first came in, Ed Woodward did make an effort to be transparent. David Gill had contempt for the fans, which goes back to the 2005 takeover and, you know, his mendacious role in that. He hated Woodward. Woodward hated him. So Ed came in and tried to do that job differently. Now, it backfired on him from some naivety because he misread the relationship between United fans and the Glazers and his role in the takeover. And then, of course, his bumbling, you have to say it, incompetence in the beginning that I'm sure he looks back on and thinks, I wish I'd have handled things differently. That's okay. You know, I'm just saying, like, Richard Arnold had mentioned the Super League. We'll let him do a show where he's going to get questioned about things like that, where he doesn't have, you know, what's your questions? Submit your questions before I. No. That's not transparent. And the media are not PR. The media are there to ask questions. Real questions. See, this is what bothered me about the whole Jurgen Klopp thing when he went after that journalist who, for asking a so-called stupid question. The problem is, Kyle, these press conferences are so sanitized now that if you ask difficult questions, you aren't getting me allowed back. If he was to turn around and ask Jurgen Klopp, why did you not win the league last season and why were your energy levels below, all that, he'd get kicked out. So they've turned it into a mundane exercise of rhetorical questions that are not worth reading. So it's their fault. And by the way, if they get their way, they will put an end to press conferences. They just want to communicate through club media. So, you know, that's the direction that's going in. So I'm just saying, for me, I think, when it comes to, difficult questions, Richard Arnold has a lot to answer.
Yeah, I'm not hopeful that things are going to change under Richard Arnold, but we'll have to wait and see how it develops. Okay, coming back to the game tonight, a very bizarre substitution to bring on Harry Maguire for Ronaldo, and of course Ronaldo was not very happy about that. I assume it was because we gave away a 2-0 lead at Aston Villa, and Ralph Ranić was being a bit more pragmatic tonight. But I also want to ask you about um, Jaap Stam's comments on another podcast about Harry Maguire, and he said, "I think Wes Brown was quicker and faster than him. He was more mobile too in 1v1s in big spaces. When you play for United, you need to be able to defend 1v1s in big spaces. You need to be able to defend." He says it over and over again. So Yapstam, another critic of Harry Maguire, on the Michael Anthony show earlier today. Maguire's been coming in for a mountain of criticism recently from the fans and the media. Nobody thinks that he's worthy of being captain of this football club. Nobody thinks he was worth £80 million. But what we're seeing at the moment is an £8 defender. He really is awful. I know he's capable of better than this, but I don't think even at his best that he's a defender that's good enough to play for Man United. So, what is your thoughts on the Harry Maguire situation?
Well, I think that one of the things I don't understand with Maguire is when you are not playing well and things are not going great for you and you have a problem connecting with the fans, play the gallery a bit, fly in the tackles, right? Do the things the fans want to see you do. Doesn't take much, right? Because, like I said earlier, fans will forgive a lot if they know you care. You look at Phil Jones when he walked off that football pitch, and you look at how quickly the sentiment changed from Phil Jones being a clown to Phil Jones being someone beloved by United fans because he showed he cared. Now, that's what United fans want to see. Okay? In that stadium, be it Brentford or Old Trafford, there will have people who've travelled from all over the world, spend enormous amounts of money, going to enormous upheaval in their lives just to watch them. And I think the bare minimum they're owed is effort to show up and give 100%. When they don't get that, those fans should be refunded their money. What in that performance was worth my money? I can watch that at the end of the street. If I want to watch 11 men walk around the field prancing about, I can find that in any park anywhere, right? So to me, I think there's Maguire. When you're a captain of Manchester United, you have a massive responsibility. You walk down the halls of that football club, and what do you see? You see the Busby babes. You see pictures of past glories. You see the great players that represented this football club, the great captains, the weight of expectation on your shoulders. Okay. When you go on that pitch, you should be conscious of that. It's not just you're playing for. And to me, I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen any respect for the club's history, the club's identity, nothing. And what's unbelievable to me, Kyle, and this goes beyond the players, Manchester United had an ironclad identity, right? That was formed over 100 years. They lost it. How do you lose it? How did imagine Disneyland losing their identity? Imagine Coca-Cola losing their identity. That's iconic. United are. They're a. I made this point on my own podcast. The New York Yankees are a global brand, recognized by almost everyone, but yet so few people actually pay attention to their results. It's just an iconic brand. Well, it's the same in Manchester United. It's an iconic brand, right? But they lost their identity. What are they? Because it keeps getting retreaded. Well, one day they're Galacticos. You know, we've gone away from the era of not signing superstars. The problem is when you don't sign superstars, big players, you need exceptional management. Like Klopp, who has a team that is greater than the sum of his parts. But Liverpool have to be that way because they don't have the commercial clout to make money anywhere else. Certainly not in comparison to United. So football clubs that take football seriously and is a fundamental part of their success commercially and everything else, they can't afford to get it wrong. if you listen to what Ten Hag said, there's a coherent structure from the top to the bottom, all of which is synchronized and work together. We don't have that at United. Everything's disjointed. Everything from the pitch to off the pitch to the business. I mean, imagine United getting rid of Solskjaer, or sorry, Ed Woodward, and giving the job to the janitor at the end of the year. Now, they never take that risk on a business side because those losses hurt a lot more. You know, loss on a balance sheet hurts more than on a league table. Bottom line. So, and if it didn't, they wouldn't take those risks. But these are risks taken by people that don't understand the risk because they don't know how to assess the risk, because they don't know how to assess good from bad. They're looking at past track records and not understanding the nuance behind that you need to work for a team that supports your identity. Like you were talking about earlier, the gut check of supporting the manager 100% so that you don't have a situation like you get at Chelsea where players know the manager is impotent. There's no power to go with them, right? So if I like you, I'll play for you. They like Solskjaer, you'll play for him. Well, now I die for him. They don't have to. What was it Neil Warnock said? It was a die to get 3 points, wasn't it? You have to really want 3 points. And so when you see what United are feeling on, I'll go back to where I started. Intensity, desire, wanting to win. Those players don't have it.
Yeah, I like everybody else was bemused that Phil Jones was even still at the club. He hadn't played in 2 years, but just based on one performance, I would rather see him partner Varane than either Maguire or Lindelof because he really showed that he cared, like you say, and I thought he had a pretty decent game. Maguire and Lindelof haven't played a performance that was equal to Jones's that night against Wolves in a long, long time. So, yeah, I think Jones probably deserves to play alongside Varane, but I don't think we're going to see that. Maguire has been dropped though. It's interesting that he didn't even get his captain's armband when he came on tonight as a substitute. I don't see him being the captain in the long term. But even I just assume that is Eric Ten Hag. He doesn't, like you've said, he doesn't have the structure. He's not going to have the structure at United that he has at Ajax. He's got Mark Overmars and added Van der Sar there. What's he going to be dealing with at United? Richard Arnold. Let's hope that John Murto and Darren Fletcher have more power, but I just don't believe that it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to be difficult for whoever comes into the club, and yeah, until the board gets it right in terms of their approach. They need to empower managers and stop trying to sign Galacticos. They need to bring in players that the team
Man, I
actually
don't
needs.
believe this attitude. This is nonsense. These stupid red lines are nonsense. Imagine Real Madrid said, we aren't signing the best players in the world anymore because Eden Hazard didn't work out. So we're not going to sign Mbappe. You realize how insane that is? Right? We're not going to sign the best players in the world because, by the way, did they really sign Galacticos? And was Di Maria one of the best players in the world? I don't think so. Good player, very good player, but not close to a Ballon d'Or winner, right? Schweinsteiger was finished over the hill. Depay certainly won the Galactico. Ibrahimovic finished over the hill, right? So how many Galacticos did they really sign? Falcao wasn't fit.
What I'm trying to say is we're overloaded in forward positions and we're very weak in the center of the midfield and we're weak at the back.
Okay, but if you're going to go out and sign players, right, for those positions, to rule out the best players in the world because Di Maria and Falcao didn't work out is absolute insanity.
I'm not ruling out the best
No,
players
I'm
in the
not saying
world.
you. I'm saying that United in general. For if they were to turn around and say, because these are stupid red lines, right? Oh, we're not going to hire an interim coach anymore on a permanent. Why not? What if he's the right guy? Just because Solskjaer didn't work out? Solskjaer didn't work out not because he was the interim manager, because of other problems. This is what I'm talking about. You need to be able to identify a problem before you can fix it. United don't know what that problem is really. And in order to try something different, the people that have the power are going to have to give it back. But they're the ones who benefit the most from the club being in this mess. So they're not going to give it back. Right? Now, what did Richard Arnold do to deserve promotion? By what metric is he being successful? I mean, I can tell you about business metric, he deserves promotion. By business metric, he's been successful, but not by football one. So tell me, what has he done to deserve to run this football club? What knowledge has he exhibited that tells you he should be running the biggest football club? Do you think Ajax are run by Richard Arnold? Do you think uh, Real Madrid are run by Richard Arnold? This is bullshit. This is insane.
Yeah, and it's more of the same really because he went to Bristol University with Ed Woodward. They're both accountant slash bankers, and I don't expect anything to change. He's friends with Ed Woodward, isn't he? So it's not
Yeah, but
exactly a
man,
change in
this is what I'm
direction.
saying. His skills are in business. His skills are not in football.
Yeah,
So to me, if like I said with United, you judge them on what they do, not on what they say. So,
yeah.
sitting here talking about giving a football or director of football more autonomy, why didn't you do that years ago? I mean, fans have been crying out for years. This is bullshit, man. This is nonsense. United are not the way the football club is run accidentally. Everything you see is intentional. Now, the Glazers are not emotionally connected to United beating Brentford, nor do they care. On Monday morning, when they get handed their dividend sheet, that's what they care about. That's when they react. When did they react? When the fans reacted online and started threatening sponsors because the optics are terrible. Right? Sponsors paying all this money to be associated with Manchester United. What are they paying for? They're paying for fan equity. I sponsor your football club, therefore you buy my shit. Now, how do you do that when your fans hate you? What are sponsors getting back? All right? So, for the first time in 17 years, they've done an interview and made commitments that were 17 years too late, which they still haven't seen through, by the way. Right? This is bollocks. Right? They don't care about you or me. They don't care about this. They don't care how much you complain. They showed that when Sky Sports went to their front door. They had such contempt for Manchester United fans. They couldn't even bring themselves to say something like, you know what, we understand fans are upset. We're going to communicate through the club in the very near future. We want to make this right. How difficult would that have been? At least appear human. At least appear like you care. See, the same thing we expect from the owners, we expect from the players. Show me that you care about this football club. Not show me that you care to use it as a vehicle to make money, because that's all it is. And the problem is when there's a conflict between business and football, business wins. Mourinho said, well, you know what? When we go to America, I don't want us on multiple different coasts. Who won? Business side won. Right? He said, I wanted to be on the West Coast. I don't care what Juicy says. Because ultimately, at this club, cash is king.
You know what? The sad thing is, it's actually possible to have a successful business and a successful football team at the same time, but they don't realize that.
Mate, in order to do that, you would need to put a football person in charge of the football club. And in order to do that, people would have to compromise their own personal interests. Now, I said earlier, you look at how employees are incentivized to tell you everything about what a business goals are. So, high on earth was Edward Wood the best paid person in his position in the Premier League? Hi. Because it's certainly got nothing to do with football. Because of business. So if Ed Woodward was feeling at business and United were in a financial mess but winning leagues, Ed Woodward would have been sacked. Yep. So, this is just because I walk down the street and give £5 to the homeless doesn't mean I give money to the homeless. Right? This is nonsense. You judge them on what they do, not what they say. Now I don't mind Ed Woodward, he's a nice person. But you can't refute the facts. By the imagine they're a football club. They've been a million miles away from achieving their football objectives, which should be their primary objectives, which should mean that the people who run the football club should be held accountable. I run a business. If I was failing to meet what the goals of this business, it's raison d'etre, but I was good at other shit, my business wouldn't be successful unless that other shit was what my priority was. Mate, don't believe this nonsense. Nothing's going to change.
United should be judged purely on a football metric.
Of course, they're a football club.
And Ed Woodward's 8-year tenure has been nothing short of a disaster.
Depends how you want to look at it. For investors, it hasn't. For Glazers, it hasn't.
Well,
For you and me, that's because we're football fans. They don't care about you and me. They only care about you when they're made to care, when it affects the things they care about. Okay? Yeah. I got to split. I got to get my kids. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. If everyone give us a wee comment on the video, like the video also, and subscribe to the channel. We'll see one again next week.